We have 6 live-action Middle-earth films with the Lord of the Rings trilogy and the Hobbit trilogy, so let's rank all 6. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Hope you're having a good one today. I'm the movie ranker, and today I'm going to be ranking all the live-action Middle-earth movies from worst to best. I know there's a few animated films, The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, and Return of the King. Not going to include those this time around, just going to stick with the live action. We're supposed to get a new film next year, or perhaps in 2020, either 2024 or 2025, so when that comes out, I'll redo my list, and I'll probably shoot on those animated ones as well. But for now, we're just sticking with those 6. And I never read the books, guys. I read some of The Hobbit, the book, but yeah, so I'm not going to be going by how close these are to the books or how well adaptations they are. I'm just going to tell you what I think of these films. So make sure to leave your rankings down below in the comment section, and let's get into it. So for me, coming in the last place at number 6, I got The Hobbit, The Battle of the Five Armies. Now, I'm going to get this out of the way right away. With all 3 of these Hobbit movies, one thing that really bugs me is the amount of CGI and digital effects used. Whether we're talking about the orcs or just the background, a lot of times is like you can tell it's a green screen, where the original Lord of the Rings films were rich with their costumes and makeup and practical effects. Yes, they had some digital effects, but they were only used when they had to, and I feel like they went really overboard with these 3 Hobbit movies. And this is the entry that you can really tell that the source material was really stretched out. I mean, The Hobbit is one book made into 3 very long films. So, it probably could have been done in 2 movies, but I feel like they wanted that trilogy, they want to make more money, and you can really feel it with this one. It feels so overstretched. Like the whole first, we get the dragon attacking the town, which probably should have been in the second movie, but I feel like after they looked at their options, they said, this one battle in part 3 just isn't enough. We're going to have to add in a little bit more. So that's why I think they saved the dragon attacking the city for the first of this film, just to flesh it out a little bit more. And honestly, the big battle itself is pretty mediocre to me. It's not all that exciting. I feel like it just needed to be a little bit more epic, especially for your last chapter of this storyline of The Hobbit, right? I do enjoy that this is a more mature direction for this franchise. As the movies go, the Hobbit movies, they tend to be a little less childish and a little bit more mature. This one dealing with war and greed and all that stuff. And speaking of greed, I love how Thorin kind of starts being manipulated by his greed and by having the gold now and that, and he doesn't want to share it with anyone either than the dwarves that are with him. And I'm like, yeah, that's real interesting. I'm liking this, but it all gets kind of thrown away in one scene where he like hallucinates a bit and he's like, okay, I'm back to normal. I was just like, well, that just felt like it was a wasted idea that they could have really dove into. Maybe the book handles it better, but I did not like the way they handled and resolved that whole scenario. And Gandalf's whole side quests involving the necromancer, who we find out that it's Sauron. It's very intriguing, the build up to it, but the whole final resolution is just so unsatisfying to me. It really does nothing. This is not a terrible film by any means. It's just easily my least favorite out of this franchise. Up next at number 5, I have The Hobbit: An Unexpected Journey. Now, I really liked this one when it came out. I thought it was really well made. Every time I rewatch it, I like it just a little less. It's still okay, but it could have been better. I feel like the pacing really hurts it, especially in the first 40 minutes. It takes that long before we even start our adventure. And I get that they're trying to flesh out these dwarves and everything, but to me, the whole dinner scene where all the dwarves are coming in to Bilbo's house is just super annoying to me. I get they're supposed to be annoying Bilbo because he doesn't want unwanted guests and all that, but you shouldn't be annoying the viewer as well. Like, I was being bothered by those dwarfs. They're way too over the top and silly. and it just didn't work for me. The only exception to that is Thorin, the main dwarf. I feel like he's a very interesting character with you clearly see his motives, and he's the only kind of serious one out of the group. I must say though that Martin Freeman was an excellent choice as Bilbo. Like he really just falls right into the role, and he's really believable. I just find it kind of silly why Gandalf chooses him to be their burglar to go on this mission. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. They try to explain it by saying that Gandalf was afraid. So choosing Bilbo and seeing him do this mission gave him courage or something along those lines. It's handled a lot better in Lord of the Rings for the reasons of using hobbits. In this one, it's just kind of like, okay. Radagast is a fun addition. A really weird wizard, you know, with bird shit in his hair and on mushrooms and all that. I really enjoyed him, even though he can also be a little bit too silly. But yeah, cool to see Gandalf back and Saruman, and I think Azog, I think his name is the head villain, the head orc in this one. I like how he's like for revenge on Thorin for taking his arm and everything, and he really wants to get back at him. That's really cool. Again, he's CGI. You could have had someone in a practical costume or whatever, like the Lord of the Rings movies, and it would have been 10 times better because not everything needs to be CGI, especially something that's as humanoid as the orcs. You know, they're in almost the same shape as humans, so why go that route? Probably just easier nowadays, but it feels lazy to me. But for me, the main highlight of this film is easily Bilbo's encounter with Gollum slash Smeagol. It really feels like they're capturing the magic of the Lord of the Rings in that scene, in that moment. It's so great. Easily the standout moment of all this trilogy, the Hobbit trilogy. I just love the riddle game that they play and how Smeagol's like so unhinged. And it's like, all right, if you win, I'll show you the way out. If not, I'm going to eat you. And yeah, it's just how when he slowly starts to figure out that Bilbo has his ring and he starts going mad, all that is just so good. I just wish we could have got more of that in this trilogy. And as I said before, this one feels probably the most childish out of all the movies, but I get it. It's based off a children's book, so it is going to be a little bit more childish, but I feel like the sequels improved on being a little bit more mature. But this one, yeah, at times is a little too silly for me, but it's still worth a watch. Coming in at number 4, I got The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug. Now, this one just has great pacing, the best out of this trilogy. It just moves right along. You don't notice the runtime for once. It's just so much action and adventure. It's never a dull moment for me. Sure, it takes 2 hours to get to the dragon, what everybody really wants to see. But like I said, I appreciate everything that comes before that. It's just always moving, always fun. You know, from meeting Bjorn, that shapeshifter in the woods who can become a bear, who doesn't like dwarfs, you know, interesting character there, to when they go into the forest alone without Gandalf and they all get attacked by these giant spiders. It uh, just really well made, the action in here, and it keeps me completely invested. I also like when they show up at the elves' place and they all get imprisoned and Bilbo has to use his burglar skills to steal the keys and rescue all of them and get them out in those barrels. It's really cool. The barrel scenes can be a little silly at times, like I said before, but for the most part, I love all the action in here. All the new additions to the cast are great here. I love Evangeline Lilly's character, Toriel. She's an elf. She plays a perfect elf. Like, who would have thought? But I really think she nailed the role here, and I like her little relationship she forms with one of the dwarfs. It's pretty interesting. We got Legolas back here, Orlando Bloom. He's great, you know, of course, from Lord of the Rings. It's cool to see characters in both these trilogies, like Gandalf and him. Luke Evans plays Bard, a human character in here who helps out the dwarves for a little while. He's also really interesting how his ancestors or father or whatever was involved in trying to take out the dragon when he attacked the city back in the day. And of course, we get Smaug himself, the dragon, played by Benedict Cumberbatch. Doctor Strange himself, he does a great job, and yeah, that whole scene with Bilbo and the dragon, it's all great. It's golden. All of their dialogue and how the dragon's trying to explain to him that Thorin will be mad if he gets this gold and that like it will drive him crazy. And the whole finale with Smaug heading to the city and letting them know I'm gonna go destroy that city, and there's nothing you can do about it. And it just really sets up for an epic final chapter here. It really made me want to go watch the third movie when this one ends, so it does its job. Now, coming into third place, I just have to say this is a huge step up in quality, like huge. These are brilliant films, the Lord of the Rings films. And for me, coming in at number three, I have The Two Towers. Lot of fans of this one. I enjoy watching it as well. It's just my least favorite of this trilogy. But I have to put this out there right away. Again, the CGI and the practical effects are so much better in this than the Hobbit trilogy. They only use CGI when they have to. They use it as a tool instead of every scene being covered in CGI. No, the orcs and all the monsters are all practically done. It's just people in costumes and makeup and that, and it looks so much better, million times better. The cinematography is so beautiful. I think filmed in New Zealand, and you get all these great shots of mountains and forests and everything like that. All three of these films, again, all have great cinematography. And for starters, I love the interactions between Frodo, Sam, and Smeagol. How they're all kind of together. Smeagol being their guide to Mount Doom. And you know he doesn't have the best of intentions, and he'll probably turn on them at any moment, but you never know when. And yeah, just when they're asleep, the hobbits, and you see Smeagol like planning stuff out with himself, and how the camera keeps going from side to side to show that he basically has two personalities at this point. It's just so brilliant, really greatly shot, and just really well written in the book, and it adapted perfectly to screen here. And Frodo, how he feels bad, he feels pity on Gollum because he knows that he was a normal hobbit at one point, but he became this creature because of the ring, and he feels the ring doing it to himself. This is the movie you really start to see the ring take a toll on Frodo. Like, he's starting to slowly lose it. And I got a shout out to Andy Serkis, who plays Gollum, does he put on the all the balls for the CGI suit and that, and it looks so damn good for the time. And yeah, just his acting skills is great as these type of characters. He's Caesar in Planet of the Apes, and he completely pulls that off as well. Of course, we get a kick-ass battle at Helm's Deep, this huge grand battle. And yeah, it's choreographed very well. Love the cinematography, love the way it's shot and everything. You got like Legolas going downstairs on a shield, just taking out people. It's so badass. I love it. And him and Gimli starting to form a competition. Yeah, who can take out more orcs throughout these films? That's a whole lot of fun. I just found it kind of stupid that they don't use their archers sooner when the orcs are coming. It's like one guy accidentally shoots his arrows, like, oh, and it kills one of them, and they're like, hold it. It's like, wouldn't you think they would have just went all out while they were far away? But they wait till they get right close before they start fighting them. I never understood that. I'm also not a fan of the Ents, the talking trees. I don't know, it just always seems silly to me. I know they're in the books or whatever, and it was probably put in there for some social commentary on the environment, like how people are destroying the woods and that in nature. There is some of that in here that I like, but the trees themselves, I find they really slow down the film when they're hanging out with Pippin and Merry. And also Gandalf's return, his resurrection as the White Wizard, that always kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I just feel like it takes away from his emotional death in Fellowship of the Ring. And on rewatch, when you're going through this trilogy, he's going to come back. So it just doesn't hit as hard anymore, his death. And I'm just like, well, if he can be resurrected, what's the point? He should be going out in front of the battle, because maybe he could just be resurrected again. I don't know. I just never really liked that aspect. But guys, don't be yelling at me in the comments. These are only mere nitpicks. They're not really flaws I have with this movie. I don't have a huge amount of problems with it. It's just little things like that don't hurt the score of this movie too bad. Because I know you guys are diehard fans. There's a lot of diehard fans of The Two Towers. It's a lot of people's favorite. And I don't want to take that away from you. It's just personally my least favorite of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Up next, at number 2, I have Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. Now, this is how you do a first chapter of a big epic adventure. They nailed it with this. First time I watched it was on VHS when it came out. Had no idea, no clue about anything with Middle Earth. Didn't know the source material, didn't know nothing. I didn't even know this was supposed to be a trilogy. I thought this was like a one and done. I watched it, I'm like, that's kind of a weird ending with them just going off in the canoe, Sam and Frodo, but I'm like, okay. And I never really thought of this movie after that. I never seen Two Towers when it came out, and I only caught Return of the King back in theaters. So, yeah, then when I go back to this movie, I'm like, wow, once you know that this is going to be a bigger story, it's going to be a trilogy or whatever, this movie works so much better. And funny enough, I complained about An Unexpected Journey, the Hobbit movie, of taking too slow, taking too long to get going. This movie takes a while to go on the adventure as well, but I find it's never a dull moment uh, in the whole intro because I love all the characters. I just love the mythology and how we're slowly making our way to this adventure. And the story just makes way more sense to involve Frodo, a hobbit, you know, since hobbits are the best ones to carry the ring because they're less likely to be subdued to the evils of Sauron and the ring, right? Of course, it still happens just slowly over time compared to men, or even Gandalf doesn't even want to have it on him or in his person, right? Because he's scared with the powers he has. Imagine if he had the ring, he could be a real evil bastard. But you know, so to me, it just makes a lot more sense to have the hobbits involved here than in the Hobbit movies. That didn't make as much sense. I like the darker tone that this movie has at times, like with the Nazgul hunting down Frodo. They're It's basically like a horror moment when they show up, you know. I love those horror elements, and the look of them just really cool. They remind me of Grim Reaper, death itself. And of course, we got Strider, who we know as Aragorn. He shows up and is always protecting Frodo against the Nazgul and that, and he's a complete badass right out of the gate. And I really love all the Fellowship that we were introduced here, all 9 of them. They're all interesting and have, you know, interesting backgrounds and character traits, all different from different places. You know, we got an elf, we got a dwarf, 4 hobbits, a wizard, a few humans. So it's a real interesting group dynamic, and I love that. And we get Sean Bean in here as Boromir, and he's one human who starts to screw up and starts to see the ring and getting controlled by its power. And at one point, he tries taking it from Frodo. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. It's kind of showing you how easy manipulated humans can be. But he really redeems himself. I was like, I hate that guy. But then he returns in the end, redeems himself by sacrificing himself to save the hobbits. I think that's a great character moment. It's just funny that this guy, doesn't matter what movie or show he's in, he was Ned Stark in Game of Thrones, he never survives. He always dies. And this movie is just a great adventure. I love all the places they go to when they're in the mines, and Gandalf has to take on Balrog, that big ass demon thing. It's just so epic, and like I said, his death, when you don't think he's going to come back in the next one, his death hits really hard emotionally for all characters. But for me, coming in the first place has to be The Return of the King. To me, this is a cinematic masterpiece, one of my favorite films ever made. I seen this in theater, funny enough, and I didn't see The Two Towers before. I was just with a friend and their parents when I was younger, and we ended up going. I didn't know we were going to go see this movie, and I was just so confused at the time because I've only seen Fellowship of the Ring once, like 2 years before this, prior. And watching this, I just didn't know what was going on. I found it way too long. But oh my god, I was wrong. When I finally went through the trilogy on my own at home, I realized how amazing this movie is. It just really wraps up the storyline in the trilogy brilliantly. It ties up all the loose ends. We get great character arcs all around. It's dark, it's epic, and it's an emotional roller coaster, really, especially in the final act. Things get crazy. I love how Smeagol slowly starts convincing Frodo that Sam is out to get him and to screw up his quest, and he just wants a ring for himself. And you're like, no, you feel so sad for Sam because he may be the biggest hero in this flick. Yes, Frodo had to have the burden of the ring, and maybe Sam wouldn't have made it that far himself, but man, does he do everything in his power to help Frodo, from even carrying him up the goddamn mountain. Like, and you feel his tears when he's crying, and he's just such an underrated, great character. And just the bromance between Frodo and Sam throughout these movies is just so fun to watch, and to see how it changes over time and the things they go through, thick or thin. By the end, you're like, love those guys. And that whole finale with Frodo at Mount Doom about to drop the ring and he can't do it. You're like, is he really not going to be able to do it? And I don't know. I get chill bumps when he's holding it and he's just like, no. And I'm like, oh my god. I'm like, Sam, push him in. No, but it's just with the musical score behind it too. It's just so epic. And the way it's shot and the battles going on at the same time. And yeah, the musical score is like very like, you hear like, oh, it's like very cinematic with like almost like religious undertones with it, and it's just so damn epic, and it adds so much to the scenes. And yeah, with him battling Smeagol and Smeagol biting off Frodo's finger and eventually falling off into the lava and dying with the ring, wouldn't change that finale in any way. I absolutely love it. And I also love that with every movie, we spend more and more time with Merry and Pippin. Even they start off as kind of like side characters, like not meaning a whole lot, but with each movie, especially in this one, Return of the King, they get a lot more screen time. And I was like, it just makes their characters seem that much more important. Just like all the rest of the Fellowship, I think they do a great job with the amount of characters they had. And of course, I have to talk about the big battle in here. My favorite battle of the whole franchise. It's just so damn good and huge and epic in scale. The amount of troops coming at them, you think there's no way they can defeat them with their huge ass elephants that seem unstoppable. They have the Nazgul there riding their like weird dragon things, the Witch King. Man, it's just so damn cool, especially when the ghosts show up to help them out. Those undead ghosts who, I like their little backstory too, how they're cursed because they ran away and hid from battle before. And the only way to undo the curse is to finally pay their dues and go out and fight with the king. It's just so great. I love it. One complaint I always hear about this film is that it has too many endings, and I never really thought that until I started hearing a lot of people go on online. And yeah, perhaps it does have a little too many endings, but it never really bothered me, to be honest. I think they're all the story wraps up really nicely in a few ways, and that just never personally bothered me. This movie is a 10 out of 10. It's a masterpiece in my mind. Like I said, I wouldn't change anything. It's just so damn good, and it easily comes in the first place in this franchise. So there you have it, guys. There's my ranking of all 6 Middle-earth films, all the live-action ones anyway. Like I said before, let me know what your ranking is down in the comment section. I literally seen Lord of the Rings, all 3 of those movies put in first place on other people's rankings. They're all just so good. Some people love the Two Towers, some people love the Fellowship, some people are like me that think Return of the King is the all-time best. But I want to hear your thoughts. You can also follow me on Letterboxd and Instagram. My links to those are in the description of this video, like always. And until next time, guys, thanks for watching.